Hey everyone, well we are back painting some beautiful flowers. These are Peavine flowers along the American River Trail and they are absolutely gorgeous, just tons of them. And I thought what a fun, simple painting to create using just 3 colors, and really it's mostly just green. You want a nice cool green and a pink, and we're going to use a pink and we're going to really go from light to dark to create a really lovely, beautiful painting of Peavine flowers within 15 minutes. Hi everyone, well today we are in the studio. We've been painting outside, but as I mentioned last week, you have to let go of control, and boy oh boy, I needed to have a little bit more control in the studio this time. And so it's been really kind of windy, and I think last week a bug landed in the paint. I'm just closing the window real quick. So I thought, you know what? I was out this morning. It's beautiful out. I got some pictures of a beautiful Peavine is what this flower is. And we're going to paint this simple Peavine today. Now, one of the things I want to mention is that there's only 3 colors, and I'm actually looking on this first one that I did. And you can see my pink went up a bit in there, but that's not a big deal here. We'll do some fixing right at the beginning of this. I'm just going to smush that. I'm going to grab some green. Today we're really looking a little bit of a study, not only this gorgeous flower that is just, it's a beautiful kind of a climbing flower is what it is out on in the nature, but looking at using intensity of color, using the same color to create some depth. The watercolor gives itself so well to that. So first of all, what I want to do before we get into that is making sure you can see this well, and I'll even come in just a little bit because I'm going to take just the slightest bit of cadmium yellow light, or if you have a lemon yellow, that will work very nicely. And I'm just going to go around and just do a little bit of a wash. I mean, a very light wash. Really just around it. Just something a little bit different today. We're not even going to go around the whole thing because I am going to incorporate just a little bit of splattering, but I'm going to go ahead and move in between the beautiful blooms over here and then come back, and I'm going to grab some more water and some more paint. And you can see, if you can barely see this, that's because there is barely any color, just a little bit of color. And then what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to come over here little bit more. I'm going to pull up just a little bit of that rose pink. If you have a permanent rose, just a pink, a real nice classic pink, and I'm going to move that around here just a little bit, like not too much. I'm just incorporating some of the colors we're going to use, and so it's not a completely white palette. This is more of a watercolor sketch instead of last week when we were really creating, the last few weeks we've been almost creating scenes. We're putting in the trees and the growing, all the weeds, the sky, the whole thing. So we're going back to just a little more of a sketch today. I just was running a little bit short on time and just practicing, you know, that continual practicing in the margins, creating in the margins, right? So now that I have that, what I'm going to do is, it's super light. I'll back up just a little bit here. I'm going to put just a little bit of yellow in a few places in my leaves, because the leaves are almost, they have this, when the sun shines through them, there's almost a bit of a dancing of color. I was starting to notice that and realize I kind of missed that a bit when I paint in the studio. I noticed that painting outside of all the translucentness of, I don't know if that's a word, how easy it is to see through the leaves. They're translucent, but then I could see different colors, like a green and a bit of yellow. So I'm just going to add a bit of green here, and I'm going to let those colors dance and play, making sure I don't let it start flowing outside. I'm going to come up here a little bit. I'm going to turn on it's about a little bit after 5, I think, as I'm filming today. So the sun is still nice. It's not glaring, but it's up. It's coming through my window nicely where I don't have shadows, but I'll add just a little bit more light so you can see that a bit better. Okay, and I'm going to come in a bit. You can see that watercolor is starting to dance around. I've got 5 leaves. It's nice to have an odd number. I did notice most of the leaves were on twosomes, but not all of them. So there would be kind of 2 to a bush here. I was reading about the Peavine. It looks like there's about over 100 varieties, about 30 here in North America where I am. And they're either bushes or they call them climbing. So this was definitely a climbing one. It was probably 3 or 4 feet off the ground, and it was almost like it was spreading its wings, except that its wings were actually the flowers, and they were just spreading up the hill that and I was walking on a path, but it's at an angle, so it was just spreading upwards. It was really quite lovely. It's been beautiful weather, very temperate, and so it's not been terribly hot, and I think the flowers, it's almost like their last hurrah before the heat of the summer really kicks into high gear here. So it's just been a wonderful time to be outdoors. I'm just adding a little bit of yellow in the center here. And now we're gonna go with the pink while that green dries. So what I'm gonna do is I'm actually gonna use a smaller brush. I was using, was about a round 6. I'm gonna go down to my round 2 now. And so it's still a round tip. It's pretty tiny though. And I'm gonna add quite a bit of water to my pink, because what I really want to do is I want a very light pink. These sweet Peavines were quite light, and they're with kind of almost bursts of pink in them. So again, you could almost see them. They were almost a bit transparent, as well as their leaves. And then they would just have these, their spot parts of them would just be this bright pink. So I'm going to see if I can capture that with the watercolor. And watercolor is great because it allows us that ability to, using the same color, you can create depth by just adding more paint on your palette. Not the same when we're painting with acrylic, right? Where you have to use different techniques to create shadowing and different intensities, or you add a different color, you have to add some white or some black to it. We can just use the more paint or less paint. So again, I'm just gonna kind of move around. And these beautiful, they're almost butterfly petals, where the bottom of the petal, you can see like the one right here, is almost flat. They almost come together and kiss, but one petal overlaps the other, which was just really pretty and delicate. They kind of remind me a little bit of butterflies. I got the sense of like ballerina shoes, although not quite, but just the sense of a graceful dancer as they moved in the breeze. And I included just that clip of the video I took, and you can see the wind was just gently moving them along. You almost had the idea, or I did at least, as if they were not attached to their vine, that they might just gently meander down the trail, just real gently, not in a rush, just taking everything in, enjoying the morning. Okay, I'm gonna add a little bit more water and just move this around here. And that's actually a bit more intense than I intended, but that's okay. So what I'll do is I'm gonna leave some more white there. We'll add that in there. And now what I'm gonna do is I am gonna add more pink here. So I'm just gonna go ahead, grab some more pink, and I'm gonna let that in certain areas in the top of the blooms where I was seeing it pop out, and then these little baby blooms down below, I'm going to add in that color. And you can always add in a little bit of water like that, so that way you can keep it a really smooth transition. It doesn't look blotchy. And again, I'm going to come and grab that brighter, bolder pink, and all I'm doing, it's the same color. I'm just there's not so much water on it. I had a group of women over to paint on just over the weekend. It was a lot of fun, but it was fun again to see them, their different styles, but looking at how they use the medium of, a little bit more heavy-handed with the paint, and some of them using it, letting that water shine through a bit by leaving more white. There's not really a wrong or right way to use watercolor, all sorts of different techniques. You can be gentle with it, you can be a little more heavy-handed. I like being a bit more gentle and really taking advantage of the whimsiness of watercolor. I think that's a lot of fun. And knowing too, you don't have to paint like you're coloring in a book, right? In a color book. You can really just move the paint around and give it a little bit of guidance, but let it go where it wants to go and create just a beautiful work of art. Now this is looking super nice. I am going to go ahead. I got a bit of a splotch right here. You can see here too, if you wanted to play with your colors beforehand, I had just done a little swatch of pink, of yellow right there, and then of green.
So just, it's a nice way of knowing the colors we're going to go nicely together. Now, one of the things I want to point out is that green and pink together, just like red and pink, red and green, they will create a brown if they touch each other. So you want to be cognizant that the green and the pink don't touch. And now I can show you what happens if they do. I'm going to just do some splatters. It's not so bad if you just get a dot. So I'm going to do some pink over here. If you splatter on the wet areas, it's going to move around a bit. So see how I got some on the leaves? That's not a big deal. I'm going to show you how I'm going to use that to create a bit of shadowing. I'm going to get a little bit of green down here. Just I'm not doing tons of splatter. I just really kind of want the effect, not trying to make it use the splatters like I did and like I've done previously or in the course Exuberant Flowers, where we really use the splatters to create the design. Right here, I'm just adding a little bit more fun, a pop of color, really taking advantage of the whimsiness of the watercolor. Now I'm going to come back with that green, and I'm going to bring in the camera just a little bit so you can see that. So I'm going to go right here. And right in there, I'm going to take that green because I want to definitely darken it up a bit. And I've got some more color. And where I actually created some of those gentle lines on the leaf, I'm going to just add in some emphasis and just incorporate some of that pink. I had noticed with these leaves, there was vertical lines going down instead of out, which I thought was really, really interesting. A friend took me over to some botanical gardens that are in the area that I had never been to. It was just a quiet oasis. And you know, it really, once again, we were just looking at all the different leaves. Like the flowers are beautiful. That always like is the star of the show. But looking at the different leaves and all the different shapes and the detail, the leaves are a work of art in and of themselves. So just taking advantage of that and looking too where there's going to be some shadowing. So looking at the flowers and the sun's coming down or a little bit behind them, we're going to have some darker leaves, right? And so a lot of times too, what I'll do is to show some of the shadowing, I'll paint darker the bottoms of the leaves, and especially where the stem is underneath the flower, because we know that's going to be in shadow. And over here as well. And I could certainly dip a bit of pink right over here. I mean, just kind of dip it in and then come back with the green, knowing it's going to create that darker image. And I don't want to incorporate more colors. I want to use the colors I already have right on here. And that looks really nice. And again, a little bit darker, creating that contrast, moving downward with some of my leaves. I'm going to come up here as well. Create that darker stem, bring it all the way down and up here, and just again enjoying the rhythm of the paint. Not solid lines, right? I can see the backside. These flowers are facing me, but these were facing away from me, and so I could see the back of their little stem that holds them up, almost like a little bit of a trumpet or a shell holding them up, a capsule, which I thought was really lovely. And a little bit more green down here. You can certainly add a little bit of yellow too. If you thought, I can see some more translucent area, I can just add a little bit more yellow here, up here on top of the stem. Isn't that pretty? I'm going to just do a little bit of the green there. I actually want a little bit of a yellow. Just for fun, I'm going to go a little bit heavier up on this one than I did on the other painting with my splatters. And then too, if you notice, I got a little bit too much, like I've got a line of green there, you can always come back, add in some more green so it doesn't look like there's spots on parade, right? And that looks pretty. I'm going to come back with my pink and in just a couple areas. Right over here, I got a little bit of green in there, so I want to add in those little pops of color. Creating that intensity. Contrast is beautiful. I love things that are contrasted. This is turning out really nicely. Really, really nicely. If you wanted your petals bigger, you can certainly expand them up a little bit like this. That looks great. Okay, let me look at the time. I don't think we've even been painting for 15 minutes. Isn't it amazing what we can paint in just a few minutes? You know, you don't need tons of time, for a hobby sometimes, just to sneak in your art room or your table and do a little bit of painting. It's so relaxing. It's so just a wonderful way to study nature and appreciate the beauty around you. Yep, we are right under 15 minutes. So that's fantastic. I've got a couple of paintings. Just so you know, this is a 6x8, which is really nice. And this painting over here is more of a square. And you can see too, as I was deciding what to draw, if you're drawing too, I just wanted something a little bit more simple in this one, with more of the beautiful stems with those blossoming flowers and blooms that are coming. In this one, I had more room to create a little bit of a different look, right? So lots of options. I hope you have a beautiful day. Enjoy your painting time, and I'll see you really soon.